My name is Melinda Hart. You are watching Stamping with Hart. I am an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up, and you can find more information, including a free project sheet as to how to make today's project on my blog, www.stampingwithheart.blogspot.com. April is Autism Awareness Month. Today's project is a matching activity or a color labeling activity. First, I'm going to start by walking you through the steps of the project, and we're going to talk about the products used today and why. And then I'll go a little bit into how you can modify this just depending on your loved one's needs, who is on the spectrum. These are ideas. I have to issue a disclaimer saying that everyone is different and always consult with the families or the professionals of that particular person. Now let's go ahead and jump into it. So with this coloring activity, we're going to be doing a lot of repeat stamping, repeat cutting, and repeat laminating. So I am using the Brights cardstock that has 10 colors in it. It's a color collection by Stampin' Up, and it has a lot of primary, easy to identify colors if this is for a child or for children. My son is 6 and I am customizing this project for him. He knows his primary colors, he can actually verbalize them, and this is a way to help him do that because this will be more of a preferred activity for him since they are trucks. And that is why I use the Best Delivery stamp set from Stampin' Up. So I'm using Memento Tuxedo Black ink, and I also brought in my laminator and laminator sheets to give some more reinforcement to these projects. Here is my Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. I am die cutting all of the names of the colors with the Playful Alphabet dies. One of my favorite things about this set of dies is that the letters are capitalized and they are very clear and easy for a child to read. Whether that child is learning their alphabet or whether that child is, learning to read or learning sight words. This die set is such an essential part of creating activities for kids. So I would highly recommend this die set if you don't already own it. And if you do, this is great for multiple different activities that you could do for kids. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking these colors. Stampin' Up would call this Pacific Point. We're going to call it blue for the sake of having an educational activity for Connor. And so we go on and about doing that with, the red, the yellow, the orange. I don't show them all on camera, but I showed enough so that you can get the idea of what is required. So throughout this video, you may hear me referring to kids or child or to my son Connor because that is what I know and that is what I have in mind and that is what I'm tailoring this project to. But please, I want to make sure that everyone feels included here. If you are working with older children, if you are even working with adults who are on the spectrum who might appreciate projects like this, there is no age limit here. I just want to be sure that, everyone is feeling included. I know that a person's physical age and their developmental age are two completely different things in this world at times. So, if you're not familiar with autism or the different levels of autism, we could talk about that another day. But what I will say is, I would always suggest reaching out to the families and just opening up a line of communication as to what you can do to help these, family members, loved ones, these children, help them feel included in art activities and crafting. So here, let me just jump back into the tutorial. I was measuring the size of the letter so that I knew what measurement to cut the pieces out. So for the actual letters that are going to get glued to these strips, I cut the strip to 1 inch. And then I just cut them all long and figured I would trim them down because all of the words are different sizes, right? So I just felt like that was the easier thing to do. And then on the negative, where the words were actually cut out and they're now missing from the cardstock, I used a 1 1/4 inch piece of white paper to reinforce the backing. I'm just using multi-purpose glue here. If you are including the child or the loved one in your activity, if they're helping you, just depending on their level of capability or their level of interest, you could have them do this part if this is something that they would like. This is something that would be considered a fine motor activity. There's a lot of pinching and detail work required with this. So if you would want to have them help with maybe something that requires a little less of the fine motor, you could have them do something else. But you could incorporate whatever they have in their craft room that they like to use as well. So we are repeating this process with every color, basically. So like I said, this is an activity that is going to take time, but it's an activity that's going to be absolutely worth it because the kids will be able to use it again and again and again. Whenever you give a child with autism something new or something that they don't recognize, it may take time for them to adjust to it or for them to want to engage with it. So be patient and don't put pressure on them would be my advice as an autism mama. I would just say, you can talk to the family and see if they have a preference for how they would like to introduce a new activity to their child or to their loved one. They may or may not give you feedback on that. And if you feel like the family wouldn't be comfortable talking about that, you don't have to ask. You don't have to make the actual activity for them. You could share this. You could just ask the question. But one of the biggest things that I come across as an autism mom is how the communication can be hindered by the fact that everybody is trying to be polite, or maybe that they don't understand, and there would be a lot more explaining involved. So I know just from interacting with so many of you, I have so many teachers and parents and grandparents who reach out to me and tell me your stories, which I absolutely love and appreciate. And I tell you my stories, right? Just from time to time. I just think that communication is a very big piece of this. And I am personally dealing with a situation where we are struggling with inclusion at Connor's school. So there are different ways that you can engage, with people who are on the spectrum. There are ways to figure out what they prefer, what they like, if they need, a certain amount of space, if they need a clean space. There are so many different things that you can do to help them be successful with a task. In the case of my son, his attention to task was about 3 to 5 minutes. And now we are all the way up to 6 minutes and working our way over a period of time up to 10 minutes for an activity. So even though an activity like this for us to build out for the kids would take a little bit longer, you could bring them in for 1 or 2 minutes to, if they like the slider on the trimmer and you feel like they're developmentally mature enough to, handle it with supervision, always with supervision, of course, you could have them do the slider. Or you could have them, turn the crank on the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine and then just let them walk away, or let them have their snack, or give them a break, that they may need. That's what we do with Connor. And Connor's favorite tool in the craft room is the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine. And of course, it's always with supervision. But Connor is a sensory seeker and he appreciates pressure. So he loves the pressure of the plates being fed with the crank through the machine. He loves to hear the cracking and he likes to see the shapes that come out when he's done cutting. So there's a lot of positive experience for him around that. Now, he has difficulty with fine motor activities at this time, so we wouldn't worry about him having to glue a bunch of letters on a piece of paper. He does love to use a glue stick, right? I love to use my multi-purpose glue. So there are different ways that we can help build their confidence and include them without them necessarily having to speak or communicate verbally with us, right? So, okay, now let me talk a little bit about the laminator. You should be able to get your laminator at any big box store, something like that. I'm sure they're available everywhere. My laminator is Scotch. I do a lot of laminating because Connor, he can be a little tough on his activities. So this helps to reinforce them. And here you have 2 layers of cardstock, right? So they're pretty well enforced. And if you feel like the kids are a little more gentle with their activities, then you may not need to laminate. But I choose to laminate for Connor because I know he's a growing kid and he's tough and he loves to bend and rip and all of that. That's part of the sensory experience for him. So this helps keep these activity pieces intact. The Scotch laminator sheets that I use, it's the same brand. They can fit up to an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper or cardstock, but they have laminators out there that I think will laminate up to like 12 by 12 or 12 by 16. I'm not sure because I don't own it, but you can do your research on that and see, just depending on what you would want to do. But I highly recommend it if you're going to be making learning activities, or if you're going to be making a PEC system, which is a form of communication system for kids on the spectrum who are nonverbal, like my son. You could do it that way as well. So just whatever works for you. So like I said, this is a coloring activity. Right now I'm just trimming all these pieces down and getting rid of that extra laminator material that's around each of the pieces. Your paper trimmer is perfect for this. I would say just make sure your blade isn't entirely dull, but it pretty much cuts through very smoothly, just like butter. And you can go through and cut all these pieces out at one time. So, my priority items for making this project would be, have those nice primary colors. Go with something, very clean, like black or white as your backing, or for your ink. You could also do the coordinating ink, and do tone on tone. So Pacific Point ink on Pacific Point truck, if you want to do that. I wanted the trucks to be uniform and clearly defined because my son really likes that. And again, if you reach out to, the caregivers of, the person that who is on the spectrum, they have a lot of information that other people may not necessarily know because you aren't in all of the therapy sessions, or you're not getting the feedback from school, or you're not involved in all of the activities or the day-to-day. And I don't think that anybody expects you to be most times when I'm catching up with my friends, if we go to a party or something like that, I can't really focus and talk because I have to stay with my son and just make sure that he's safe and okay, because his awareness isn't the same necessarily as other children. So sometimes, just a phone call, an email, some text messages, just with some communication back and forth. Hey, I'm thinking about making a craft project. Do you think that would be a good idea? Is there anything that he or she would like? I'd be happy to work with that, right? Now, Connor's doing really well with his primary colors, so soon we're going to be working with different colors, like pastels, for example, and teaching him those names. So entirely up to you. Now, the Stamparatus is one of my favorite tools that Stampin' Up! Has to offer. I use it almost constantly, to be honest. And just to let you know, for those of you who are interested in sensory aspects of our tools, the hinging and the moving of these plates is something that also really appeals to Connor, who is a sensory seeker. That means he really likes big movements and motions when he can do that with an activity. So anything that involves swinging or pressing or pushing or pulling, right? Squeezing, all of those things appeal to Connor. And, you may be dealing with a sensory seeker like Connor, or you may be dealing with a sensory avoider, somebody who has, maybe difficulty with a certain sound or smell or a certain feeling, So if that's the case, you can customize your craft activity or your crafting session with that person to be a little bit more comfortable for them. So maybe if they don't like, the TV being loud, have the TV off, or if they like, soft sounds or music, play that. But I would just say really communicate with the family and see what works best for them. So at some point, I wanted to mention that I made this a single identification activity, meaning there's only one truck and one color on the worksheet, which is 6x6 basic white cardstock. Entirely up to you how you want to handle that. You could do 2 trucks to a paper. You could do 3 trucks to a paper. It's up to you. I wanted to start with the simplest version. And then, of course, you can modify as you think would be best for the person you are creating this project for or sharing this project with. Now, here I'm bringing in the Velcro. And what you're going to need is for the base of the paper, so the basic white paper, you're going to need the little scratchy side of the Velcro. And you're going to need a lot more pieces of that soft Velcro that connects with it, because the soft piece is the one that goes on all of the backs of the trucks and all of the backs of the colors, right? Because you're switching those pieces out, but those 2 base pieces stay the same. So just be sure that you have a full pack of Velcro. I will share all of the products that I used in the description box below. I'll also have it on the project sheet so that you can refer back to it. But again, you can find Velcro dots in clear, white, black. You can get them in squares or circles. You can get them in strips and cut them down. You can get Velcro at, again, any big box store, any office supply store, any craft store. These items are available, and they're inexpensive, but they are invaluable to people who are creating projects like this. And don't forget about classrooms and teachers. They always ask for things like Velcro or, baggies, things that they can sort things out for the kids in or keep activities in a folder, things like that. We do that at home as well. So I hope you enjoyed this project. If you like projects like this, give this video a like and stay tuned to the next video.